Welcome to Badger Beer Brewery report for March of 2025. We are here to we haven't seen y'all in a while since Badger Beer Hour left, so we are here to give you our report. I am joined by our resident brewery expert, Joel Geyer. Hi, Joel. How you doing?
Good. How are you doing, Greg?
I'm doing great. We haven't been out here in a while. So we have a bunch of news
to
talk about. We have brewery openings, we have closings, we have brewery sales, we have all kinds of things going on. So without further ado, we're just gonna jump in. It's nice to see you, Joe. Nice to be back. We'll talk about we should be doing this, periodically, y'all. When we have big news for you, or we have enough news for you, we will still be doing our regular Badger Beer report news section with Chris and Landon. That's still going to happen, but Joe and I are going to bust out here and talk about some breweries pretty much every month, and then at the end we'll give you where we stand as far as how many breweries, who closed, who opened, all that stuff. So without further ado, Joe, let's bring it up. Let's had an opening. We had an opening just recently. Now we're filming on St. Patrick's Day, y'all. This will probably come out a couple days afterwards, so it's still going to be the weekend previous to when we recorded this. But Joel, what's going on? What's our latest brewery opening, please?
Yeah, so this is one that I think we've kind of waffled back and forth about in terms of what it kind of means for the local beer scene. And Voodoo Brewing has finally opened up in Delafield there at a new build location referred to as the Grain. And so for those unfamiliar, Voodoo Brewing, so it's essentially a franchising chain. So I would say, when people often think of the chain brew pubs, you're thinking of Rock Bottom, which is one that people around here may be familiar with because we had one in Milwaukee for a long time, Granite City, BJ's. I would say that Voodoo is a step above those particular brands, and it's a very interesting kind of story. So there are now 24 locations around the country. I think a quarter of them are in Pennsylvania. That's where they got their start. The first one was in 2005 in Meadville, and then they didn't open up the second location until 2015, and then the third location in 2016, and then not too many more years after that they started a franchise, and then it just essentially kind of took off from there. And I should, clarify again, I say franchise, they're locally owned franchises. So this is local people. This is a locally owned franchise of this brand. One article I saw did specify that the beer is still being brewed in Pennsylvania, apparently. But looking at this, both from like a macro and a kind of closer in picture, it has intrigued me more than I initially thought it would. The beer does actually sound pretty solid, and the food looks amazing. I know me and you have both commented on that. Pretty wide array in both departments, I should say. I know they've won some awards with some of their beers, and it's nice to get some more options out there in kind of Lake Country. I think that this is one that I am definitely going to get out to, so I will hopefully be able to report back within the next month or two. I would think I can get a little more hands-on if you follow my own personal social media accounts, and I'll be sure to post something on the Badger Beer report accounts as well, because it is, like I said, it is a true opening. Like, even if it is a franchise, it's a locally owned franchise, and it is the first one kind of in this part of the country. So although it is kind of like this national kind of franchise, none of these beers are ones that I have personally had, so it's all going to be new to me the first time that I do get to try them. So I am a little more intrigued than what I initially was, I think, because whenever you think chain brew pub, you don't necessarily get super excited about it, but I think this one is a little more intriguing than what I initially would have thought. So do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I have a question for you. First of all, the location, Delafield. That's that used to be a brewery desert, no?
Well, Delafield Brew House has, they have the brewery there, the Delafield Brew. I think it's called the Brew House. The Delafield Brew House. It's right off of 94 when you're going into town. Okay. And then I think Water Street also has a location out there as well. But then I'll kind of.
Okay, so it's not a complete.
No, not a complete brewery desert, but it also, I would say, is not necessarily a hotbed for breweries by any stretch of the imagination. And
underserved, maybe.
Yeah, well, in the other locations, this is more, I think, more in the actual like kind of town area of Delafield, whereas those other locations are more along kind of by the freeway where there's just a lot of like shopping centers and stuff. It's not so much in the local traffic area kind of thing. So I think it's definitely interesting. I'm interested to see how they do there. And once I get out there, both how the beer and the food and just the space in general are, because it is, like you said, it's a brand new build essentially that they were brought in for.
Yeah, and the only thing I have to comment is on their social media. According to their social media pages, it really looked like they had a good time, or I'm sorry, a good day. It seemed like everybody was in there, and they even had to open up an hour later on Sunday because they had to still, they were still recovering from the day before. So that sounds like a good opening to me. Maybe I'm wrong. I am really interested to hear you report once you roll up on there, up on Voodoo, and you'll probably be hearing about it, and maybe maybe we can get the owner in here a little bit, and we can talk to him,
because it's a different type of opening for sure than what we've kind of had to cover before. So
it's also a family-owned brewery for sure. And I don't know, they seem like regular people. I think the man in charge has or no, maybe I'm thinking differently. I'll pause on what I was about to say. So I don't have anything else more about Voodoo. Thanks for this update. And I'm excited with all the closings and all the tariff talk and all the different things going on. We have an opening.
That's
I'm not
kind
going
of
to get all like picky about the whole franchise thing. I just see an opening.
Well, and we have some other openings too, and that I should have led off with this. I meant to say is that overall, what we are covering today is mostly all positive, which I think is a really good change of pace with how that last kind of quarter of 2024 finished off in terms of the brewery report. So, and speaking of, we had another opening since the last time we talked brewery report. In Waupun, we had Hoya Hop House Brewing. So this is a brew pub. And it had its grand opening January 11th. So it's now been around open here for about 2 months. I definitely would like to get there. It looks like a really cool space. For those wondering about the name, so the Hoya is actually a type of plant. The owners are big plant people. They own a lot of Hoya plants, and there are actually Hoya plants inside of the tap room. I think hop's pretty straightforward. And then they said house was included because kind of, this is a home community, all that kind of stuff that you hear, you hear that included with a lot of names. But I think it's fun. I'm a big fan of, I'm a plant guy myself. So I think it's kind of a fun theme. The building was built in 1930. It's a garage and auto body shop. It's located downtown. So they're rebuilding it up. So I think that's really, really cool. The beer looks good from the pictures I'm seeing there. So I think it looks like a quality spot. I wish it was a little bit closer so that it would be easier for me to get to. I definitely think it's in the cards to eventually make a trek there. But yeah, it is kind of out there. There's not a whole lot else out in that direction in terms of breweries. So it's nice to see another smaller community in Wisconsin get a brew pub like this.
So this is the brewery desert I was talking about.
There's I'm trying to think what else would be out that direction. I guess because they're a little bit north of Beaver Dam, which would be Uga. Yeah, and they're south of. And Ripon has the Knuth Brewing, and eventually Fond du Lac, which we will get to later on. It's kind of there, a little ways. But yeah, there's really nothing that I don't think there wouldn't be anything within 15 minutes, I wouldn't think, or so. So it is kind of there by itself, which is really cool to see. I hope that they have a lot of success with the local community there.
All right, Joel, you get the Voodoo, I'll get the Hoya Hop.
That's what that was. It's a little bit easier for you, maybe.
Yeah, for sure. And we'll get to the third slide.
So next up, we have a very recent announcement, and that is from Gravity Box out of Boston, Wisconsin, and they are announcing a second location. Hopefully coming later this summer, although as we've seen with a lot of breweries, we'll see. That's a pretty, announcing it, and it's here now in March. I mean, that means you're talking, 3 to 6 months, unless they have a lot already done. We will see. I mean, if they're able to do it, I love it. They are opening, I guess I should have led, in the downtown Wisconsin Dells. So the Wisconsin Dells has seen it. It is one of the more, I would say, one of the more interesting locations when it comes to breweries, because we have seen some breweries come and go. Unfortunately, we have seen one like the mainstay, the Moose Jaw, and then we recently saw last year we covered an out-of-state brewery, Pals Brewing, coming in and building a large facility, and now Gravity Box is coming in and building what they are calling the Front Porch Tap Room. So it's going to be located right in downtown. So it's not going to be, out by all the water parks and quite as much of the touristy stuff. Although downtown Dells are still pretty touristy, of course. But and I think that's one thing that makes it an interesting place in relation to other places in the state, is that it is such a tourist heavy area that finding the balance with the locals and the tourism can be, kind of difficult to tread. But these people are from the Wisconsin Dells. They've had multiple family members that have operated businesses there on both sides of the owner's family. So if anyone can do this, it sounds like they have a good base to be able to do that. This is honestly one brewery that I do not have a ton of knowledge on, because I have not been able to get there yet in Boston. I drive by there sometimes when I'm going to my parents' house, but it's kind of in a no man's land in terms of a stop and hard sometimes to pull off. But I am hoping to eventually get there. And now there's going to be 2 locations kind of along that route. So definitely intrigued to see. This is one of those breweries that also makes, they make seltzers and they make their own sodas. And so I think they offer more than just the beer. So yeah, definitely excited to see where this one comes. And you will hear from us as we get more news on this and how the timeline comes, whether it is this summer or later in the year.
Yeah, and I want to jump off a little bit on what you're saying about how Wisconsin Dells area is an interesting area. We've seen, again, like you said, we've seen Moose Jaw thrive there. And we've also seen Port Huron come and go. We've also seen, I'm not sure what's going on with Bevy. Do you?
No, and then that was the Latte Stone, whichever that one was.
Latte Stone, yeah.
Yep, that
but
one
we've seen people come and go, and it's really difficult. It's nice. I'm sure it reminds me a lot of, I think, what goes on, Joe, up in Door County, tourist area, but in the winter it's literally dead. And
the Door County though has had a lot more stick though than the Dells area has, and from what I've seen.
It's just tough though. Like with those tourist areas, and then the winter coming in, and then having to brew a whole bunch for the summer, and then none for like months. And
that's probably why they're hoping to open in the summer. They probably want to try to get in and get some of those warmer months in before the winter rolls around again.
You would hope, but you're right. But having to sustain that is just a weird, like you said, it's an interesting thing. You have to have a really interesting business plan. And Moose Jaw, as we already know, they're a brewery. Don't get me wrong, and they brew beers and all that. But they have a strong restaurant behind.
Yeah, that's primarily what. Yeah, that's a majority of what people are going there for.
Right. Especially even in the winter. I know I go up there in the winter, and you know what I mean. We go to the water parks because no one's up there, and then we go to Moose Jaw. That's literally one of the it's almost so. And then of course I get beer and all that. So shout out to Gravity Box. I should be able to get there this summer to give a report if Joel can. So we'll be hearing about that one. We'll make sure.
The beer sounds really good there. I've looked at their tap list before a couple times, and they really offer a lot of different beers. So I think it looks like I'm excited for when I do finally get to check them out.
Yeah, and having a diverse portfolio is absolutely going to help at the Dells. So there's that too. Yep.
So next up, we have a transition of sorts that we have discussed in the past. So Ar-Noggin Brewing, which is down in Kenosha, for those that have driven between, Milwaukee and Chicago, you will remember they were in that garage just located right on the freeway. And they announced that they were essentially kind of selling to the people from, what was the name of the place? What was the name of the place again? I can't recall.
I thought it was Last Ditch.
Was it just Last Ditch? Yeah, that's what I was blanking on that. But anyway,
I thought
essentially they were still going to be there and having, the beer being brewed now, while being a full brew pub as well as a full bar, offering whiskeys, wines, seltzers, etc., etc. And initially, when they posted about this in December, it said that this transition to Last Ditch would happen on April Fool's Day, essentially on April 1st, and that the last day of Ar-Noggin would be March 31st. I have not gone down there to see if it fully has transitioned, like the signage and everything, but right now, the website is all Last Ditch right now. You can see I grabbed a screenshot of all the beer stuff. The food menu has changed now. They have a ton of different barbecue and sandwich options. They talk about, like I said, their whiskey, wine, seltzer selection, as well as, of course, having their beers. And I'm curious to see, I know at Ar-Noggin, they rotated through a bunch of stuff, but based off of what I'm seeing on their website, it kind of seems like they're making these brands for these beers. So I don't know if they're going to be a little more, not necessarily having flagships, but I'm just curious to see how that looks with Last Ditch. This is one that I should hopefully be able to get down to at some point to see if they're, changing up the space. It wasn't a very big space to begin with, so I'm not sure what they could all be doing with it that would have been different from what Ar-Noggin was doing. But yeah, we'll see if the, I don't know if they were joining forces. We didn't really get the full grasp on, whether or not how that was going to work with the brewing of the beer, but I will try to get more answers on that. And like I said, this is happening supposedly a little bit quicker than maybe we thought, unless they've just got everything up and running and they just haven't made the official switch yet. But everything I've seen kind of points to Last Ditch being, kind of operating. So yeah. Either way, keep your eyes out for this one because this is, like I said, a changeover there in the Kenosha area.
Yeah, and if you don't mind, Joe, I would like to add this. And I think you already, or maybe you mentioned it or not, but so we have I have a where is it, y'all? Is my my thing taking long? What I'm trying to show y'all here is that and I don't know if Joe wants to talk about it a little bit. Part of the reason why they have to wait until April is because basically there were some legal things that they had
there we go.
To clean up
Gotcha.
between the liquor license and all kinds of things. So
that's the context I was missing.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to read that off. I don't know if it matters to read it off, but if you go to their IG, so and then if you see here, Joel, it says Last Ditch Bar here.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking I was right about the whole it was the bar, because I think Last Ditch was a whiskey bar. Yeah. And then they
were coming
had
in
agreement with
Well, when they initially announced the announcement and they had the logo and everything, they had it with like the old Ar-Noggin kind of skull and hat on top of the horse, and now that is no longer the main logo, but it's one of the beer logos. So I don't know how, there's a lot of moving parts there. I think some other things are still going to shake out with this. So we'll see. Like I said, a lot of this stuff are things that we have to continue to keep tabs on, and hopefully I get down there at some point to in person be able to see what's all happening.
Yeah, I mean, this is just another tricky business brewery deal, y'all. We've seen them. Yep. We've been seeing them for months now. So yeah, good luck to Last Ditch and Ar-Noggin. We will give once April, we got a couple of weeks, y'all, and then we should be able to have an update on where they're at and whether everything is going to go smooth there or not. So it's really interesting because Racine has what, Joel? How many breweries?
Zero Littleport technically, although is Littleport currently, or because they're in the process of moving,
coming back. Yeah, they're coming back.
So they're in the process of moving, but that's really it. And then Kenosha, besides Last Ditch, they have Kenosha Brewing, which is kind of off by itself, and then there's the two downtown, Public, which of course was published or purchased by Lakefront, and then Rustic Road. So all
right, are not going to be a nice little little addition, or Last Ditch will be addition.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting. The other comment I would have on this in terms of them is it's a very interesting location because I mentioned it's one of the most visible brewery locations in the entire state, because you literally, everyone driving that stretch of freeway between, Milwaukee and Chicago, or, wherever you're going, it's right there. And they've got a big sign on the thing. So it's very, very visible, but it's also not the easiest brewery to get to in terms of getting, and winding your way back there. And it's also, like I said, it's not close to downtown. It's not close to, some of the other breweries or other businesses. So it is just a very kind of unique location in that manner. So be interested to see if they have, try to change up the way things were done. I don't know, events or whatnot, but definitely best of luck to them. I look forward to getting down there and paying them a visit.
Yeah. I want to see this interesting business transaction go through. So there you go.
So next up, we have another kind of business transaction that has been going on that when we initially kind of talked about it, and it was when we initially talked about Explorium kind of purchasing Good City, we at the time said, well, this is going to be kind of a long story that is going to have different pieces come into place over time. This is not going to be a, rapid developing all in one go. And we have seen Explorium rebrand the Wauwatosa Good City location to Explorium. And we saw in this article, they also talked about how they did close down the small location there in Mequon at the marketplace there. But this particular article in the announcement was that the OG Good City Brewing location there on the east side is going to be rebranded as Wayfinder. So this is just very, very interesting to me. The whole transaction between these two brands, and the fact that Good City, in my opinion, was one of the most interesting brands that you could have purchased because of the wealth of locations that they have. We already mentioned two of them, one getting rebranded to Explorium, one closing, this one becoming Wayfinder. They still have to do the one by the Bucks Arena. There's just a lot going on with it. And Explorium is taking a step where I didn't know it was going to be, are they just going to rebrand all of them to Explorium? Or are they going to keep one as Good City to kind of keep the brand alive? A la, Eagle Park has the Milwaukee Brewing Company tap room. And then we come here and they are actually kind of doing a whole new brand, essentially, or not, I don't know if it's a brand. They are doing a whole new experience called Wayfinder. It's actually named for the global influences. I know that Mike and his wife enjoy traveling a lot. The Wayfinder is kind of a nod towards the original Polynesian explorers, is what the article said. So apparently their chef is in there going to whip up some, more international flavors and stuff for the food menu. I am really curious to see, when it comes to the beer side of this equation, how this looks. Are we just going to see a mix of Explorium and Good City? Are we just going to see Explorium? Are we going to see some Explorium and a bunch of guest stuff? I generally, because that was not addressed in this article. So that is very intriguing to me to see where this goes, because it is not one of those two brands specifically. It's kind of its own separate thing. And it sounds like Mike might be thinking something similar-ish for the location by Pfizer Forum, because they kind of said that they're not doing anything with that in terms of a rebrand or anything until after the Bucks season, which makes very good sense. I mean, why would you? I mean, there's no reason to jump in there and try to renovate anything while, this is some of your busiest days. So I am just very curious to see what they do. I am very intrigued by this premise behind Wayfinder. I'm curious to hear what the overall, how it's going to look overall, both from the food and from the beer perspective. Mike has done a really good job with running Explorium. I have long kind of stated for the last several years that expanding and buying up places, and it's a dangerous time and tricky time to do that for breweries. But he seems to, he's done a really good job when going from the mall location to the beautiful space that they've now transformed in the Third Ward, and now taking over all of these spots, and doing it in a manner, though, that I think is diversifying their portfolio more than just slapping, they're not just slapping their logo on these and swapping out beer and saying, let's go roll out the ball and see what happens. It seems like they are really taking their time to figure out what they think is going to work best in these locations, in these neighborhoods, because they are very distinct locations. So yeah, I'm curious. And like I said, I'm as someone that goes to Bucks games, I'm obviously mostly looking forward to seeing what happens with that location there, adjacent to the arena. But I'll definitely check this out once Wayfinder comes out. I don't believe there was no timeline, I don't think, issued for this. But yeah, just one of the more interesting stories I would say here locally in the Milwaukee area when it comes to beer at the moment is following what has all transpired with this kind of, not really a merger, but this acquisition that Explorium has, because they've done it. They're doing it in a much different way than any of these other acquisitions that we've seen. Eagle Park and Milwaukee, Lakefront and Public. Like, we have not seen them. The Explorium is taking a much different route, and so I'm curious to see how that all plays out.
Everything you said. And Explorium is I don't know, at the base of it, obviously a brewery with pretty good beers and actually a really diverse beer menu.
Yes, 100%.
The food is excellent at Explorium, and the environment is excellent.
Well, that's one thing that Mike talked about, was that they were like it's like one of the more, I would say, comprehensive experiences for breweries in Milwaukee.
Yeah, and one of the things I want to, I think there might be some brand fatigue going on there, or maybe there was with Good City having like 5 locations, and I think this is just brilliant for them to go a completely different direction.
Yeah.
Even if they brand the Deer District one Explorium, there's a level of like fatigue, and I think everybody likes a new spot, Joel. And people don't follow stuff like this like us, so people aren't, if people don't want to know, they're not going to know that this is the same guy that does Explorium and all that. They're just going to know it's a new, it's a new restaurant, it's a new place to eat, it's a new place, a beer place. It's, you know what I mean? So like, rebranding is just brilliant in my opinion. So unless you have anything more, I have something.
No, go for it.
Okay, cool. What also there also is no brand fatigue with this, which is Lager and Friends, y'all. Gathering place. One of my favorite beer events in the state. We are Lager and Friends is a sponsor of Badger Beer Report. In fact, it's the first sponsor of Badger Beer Report. We will have a collaboration beer on Saturday, May 31st, 12 to 4. We'll have a booth set up. We will be there at Lager and Friends. And we'll have an exclusive beer. You'll only be able to get it there. I can't say anything else. I don't have any more details. I will say though that I took the screenshot long ago because it still says early bird price until January 1st. So I don't think there's early bird pricing, but regular price tickets, and then there's like a VIP, and then for the first time I'm seeing complimentary brats, food, and pretzels are included into the price, y'all. So that's excellent. Lager and Friends is Chris and I have been more than a couple times. So if y'all are near or in Milwaukee, come see us. If you're not in Milwaukee, I'm in Madison and I'm coming. So our Landon's in Eau Claire and he's coming. So y'all can come and hang out with us, have fun. All lagers. If you go to Gathering Places put out the first round of breweries that are going to be in. And I think they're all Wisconsin at this point. But they usually end up getting like 20 or 30 breweries, and they just bring lagers, and it's just lagers. So y'all, beer that tastes like beer, people. This is your beer fest. Let's go. So that was our sponsor. And we are shout out to Lager Friends, and thanks, Joel. What's going on? We still got more news.
Yeah,
look at
we got a couple things, just a couple smaller things for the most part, but new announcement here: Three Sheeps is growing their canning line, which is cool to see. Three Sheeps is a brewery that, for me, was one that I never really drank much of up until like the last year. And I have been drinking more of them recently. I have a neighbor who actually often picks up their variety packs, and I've gotten some of their lagers, and I've really enjoyed some of their lagers recently, as well as their Wisconsinitis cream ale. So definitely excited to see this for them continue to expand, because they really are kind of the only show in town there in that kind of little section of the state. So yeah, so continuing to grow, and I would assume with this would come more distribution, I would think, unless they're just going to solidify their distribution more. So yeah, we'll kind of see how that goes.
Cans. Next.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Next up, we have Switch Gear. So Elkhart Lake, speaking of touristy places, they have an update here where essentially the owner is looking to negotiate a sale that would essentially, it sounds like, keep the brewery open and operational there in Elkhart Lake. They've been closed during this process and are trying to still work on finalizing a deal. We don't have a whole lot of other information. It sounds like the current deal that they were working on has some hiccups to it. Says that they are selling all the equipment, the brand, recipes, and I quote, much more. He says on there they have not ruled out the potential of a partnership. Willing to discuss that. I think this is a very difficult time with everything going on. Not just, I mean, even before all the tariff stuff was going on, is a tough time looking for someone to take over a brewery. So I am hoping for the best, especially when you're talking about, this is another small community. This is the one brewery there. So we'll see. We're going to keep our eyes on this. But for the time being, that's really all the information we have to go off of is this one Facebook post. But we will move on here. And next up, we have another announcement. Our next announcement is that St. Francis Brewery has set their grand opening date. And as you are listening to this, it will be less than a month away, April 14th. I know that we covered this when they initially made their announcement. They were coming back. But for those that are maybe very new to following the Wisconsin beer scene, St. Francis was around previously, and they are taking over the same building that was where it was previously home. It looks like they kind of rebranded, got some new logos, but they kept the names. So be interested to see if the beer kind of has a similar feel and food. So yeah, curious to see how that one goes. We'll kind of follow up more with that once we get a little bit closer. And if I'm able to be there for the grand opening, we shall see. And then we also have, so I know when we've done the brewery report in the past, I have always said to reach out to us if you have any openings or closings, because sometimes things can slip through the cracks. And we found one that had slipped through the cracks. Although now it has a new name by the time we found out about it. So in Kiel, Lumberyard Brewery opened up in, I believe it was August. And then at the end of the year and moving into 2025, it rebranded as Yard 65 Brewery and Events. So they have a whole, I think, kind of event space there on top of the brewery. I don't know a whole lot much else about it besides that. This is one that could be within striking distance for me. So I would like to hopefully get up in that direction at some point. But yeah, curious, like I said, that's just one that sometimes things fall through the cracks. And then we will kind of cap things off here. I have a slide here just titled Things to Keep an Eye On. And these are some names that we have either already kind of mentioned at some point or have maybe, we're in the news kind of recently about some changes. But Boulder Junction Brewing, way up in the Northwoods there in Boulder Junction, that is one that they originally announced was going to open last summer. And it seems like the construction and maybe some other, I don't know, licensing, I don't know what all is going on, but They are now hoping to open up maybe either late this spring or again this summer in 2025. But this is one that I've had, like I said, I think I actually had this on my radar when I first joined Badger Beer Hour, which is now over a year ago. So I am hoping that the process smooths out for them so they can finally start getting some beer out to the people. One in Madison there by you, Greg, that you and I have kind of discussed recently is north of the Bayou, kind of a Louisiana-esque restaurant that suppose it kind of makes their own beer. That's our understanding of it. I have not been there, but recently they are kind of going through I don't really think it's a rebrand. I think it's more of a refresh is my understanding, kind of a renovation refresh. And in one of the videos, the owner states that they do have the name Brewery, it's north of the Bayou and it's a brewery. And she says that the brewery will become more of a forefront of the business and not many other details are given. She's been posting some other videos talking about the process. I know that they were hoping to originally open up for Fat Tuesday. That didn't happen, but I think they're hopefully going to be opening up here in the next month, I believe. So that will be something that Greg may have to be assigned to check in to see what they've got going on. Because if they're stepping up their game with the brewing, we'll have to see. That would be an interesting development there for the Madison beer scene. Yeah, and Brewfinity opening up a second location as well as another one that we initially followed. And then the one that I am also really intrigued by is Fond du Lac Beer Company. Yeah. That is one that is hopefully going to be opening up later this year. I know Chris and I have talked about it, I think multiple times, and I think once on this show about how Fond du Lac, it has to be the largest city in Wisconsin without a brewery. I would assume. I can't imagine that there's one bigger. Off the top of my head. I mean, I guess if Littleport went away, Racine would be, but Racine at least has had several breweries try to come and go. Fond du Lac, as long as I've lived here, at least, has not. There has not been a single brewery there. And so I think it's very interesting that they are finally able to get one to kind of take away that little brewery desert as something that we discussed earlier. So that will be one that we will be tracking and hopefully have more news on in the coming months. So all that said, here is our update, as I said, as we always do with the numbers. 213 breweries, 34 additional tap rooms and locations, and 16 that kind of fall into the other category, which brings the total number to 263, which is around, what we've kind of been at after, we dipped a little bit going into towards the end of the year with some of the closures. But yeah, we have some more, like I said, we have some announcements, all those ones that I was mentioning that will hopefully be opening later this year. Those are not included in any numbers. You have to officially open your doors before we're going to count you, of course. But yeah, that's where things currently sit around the state. Craig, well, what are your thoughts?
I don't have any, Joel. I just think, I'm embracing all the good news that's coming in.
Yeah.
And I'm just, we're happy. It's a good update for people who like breweries
overall.
And yeah. And we will see y'all. Joel and I's brewery reports are going to be periodic. So we'll probably see you monthly, but we may not, depending on what's going on. We go from times where Joel knows there is this brewery news being thrown at us, and then we go through a brewery news desert and keeping that theme where there's nothing going on. So we can't guarantee we'll be here every month, but we will try because we like brewery news. I know Joel likes brewery news.
Oh yeah, especially those openings, man. Feed me those openings.
Yeah. And I don't know, I'll get into the complicated business deal. I'm fascinated by those too.
Yeah.
As long as we're keeping things open and keeping people employed. I mean, obviously Joel and I could drink anywhere pretty much. But really there's a lot of, we got to keep in mind, people who are employed and need those jobs. And breweries just aren't breweries, man. People that they are small businesses with normal people like us who work there. So that's part of the reason why Joel and I are passionate about what we do here at Badger Beer Hour
100%
report. And that being said, Joel, I'll give you the last word for the brewery report.
Yeah.
March.
Well, we'll look forward to discussing. I'm sure the next time we talk, we may even be rehashing some of those stories that we just talked about and circling back on some of them. But yeah, looking forward to another year of following the Wisconsin brewery scene. And as I always say, whether it's where you're living or where you're visiting, be sure to drink local everywhere.